So yeah, First Man is the latest film from Damien Chazelle. I hope I'm saying his name correctly there. Damien, you might know, he's directed films like Whiplash and La La Land. So we were kind of joking at the screening, like, okay, how long is it going to take for him to have jazz in this film? Because, man, he loves jazz. If Whiplash and La La Land are any indication, man, he loves his jazz. But kind of like the good thing here is that First Man, this biopic about Neil Armstrong, is that, well, for one thing, yeah, jazz isn't really that present in the film. It might be in like a few bits of background bits here and there, but I guess it defined that, Chazelle isn't a one-note director. Unfortunately, the one thing I got to mention that is that, this film, it's not, unfortunately, it's really not Damien Chazelle's best. It's not a bad film by any means. Is it not a bad film? But it's just, I don't know, after Whiplash and La La Land being such like, perfect films, I was kind of expecting something similar with this biopic, and I didn't quite get it here. That being said, I really did enjoy this film. Okay, so what is Neil Armstrong? They show Neil Armstrong's journey to the moon here, trying to separate both his family life and his work life. So like when he's at home with his family, he's kind of like playful with them and everything, with his kids and all that. He's emotional when he has to deal with the death of his daughter. And when he's in the office, it's all business. Anything about his family just gets shut out. And he just kind of buries himself with work and keeps going. And Ryan Gosling is kind of perfect for this role, where he's got to be Neil Armstrong as this kind of tight-lipped guy who doesn't really like to talk about stuff in like the emotional spectrum. Now this is where Chazelle kind of like deviates a little bit from Armstrong's path here, is because Chazelle is more interested in exploring kind of like the deeper nooks and crannies of Armstrong's mind with stuff that may not be there. Like one of the things he does is he lingers a lot on death. He keeps focusing on the fact that, Armstrong is always thinking about his dead daughter in the back of his mind. And when I say, like, not always, I mean, like, when he's usually in the quieter moments, he's having these small visions of her, even though he doesn't really talk about her, like, at all. He might mention her offhandedly once or twice, but it doesn't really come up, because it doesn't really seem to be a focus. And I understand why Chazelle's doing this. He's mostly trying to... He's mostly trying to like get us engaged with like an arc for Armstrong, because through most of the film he's tight-lipped. He's just going about his day, and this drives his wife Janet nuts, who's brilliantly played by Claire Voice. She can't take Armstrong. She can't take Neil as well as he can with this job. Like he just goes into the office every day like, oh, I almost died today. Oh, some of my guys died the other day. Well, we got to press on. And she can't take it. She's putting a stiff upper lip, but she's like, I can't deal with this. And eventually it gets to a boiling point when the shuttle's gonna launch like in the next few days, and she's got to say like, look, you got to set your kids down. You got to tell them about this. But the thing is, like, that's a great scene because you get to see her explode, but also because when you sit Neil down and you have him talking to his kids, he kind of talks to them kind of like he's at a press conference, just saying like, well, I'm going up here for this amount of time. We may come back. I think we're very hopeful that we're going to come back, kids. And it's just like he's so distant to it. Now, I can't vouch if, I haven't really read that much of the biography, so I can't vouch if this is how Neil actually went about, like this in real life. But it's still interesting to follow him through this kind of, this almost kind of like quiet distance he has. Now, that being said, where the film does succeed greatly, outside of the character drama, is the atmosphere. When you're inside the capsule with Neil Armstrong and any of these training exercises, whenever he's in like the cockpit and stuff like that, you're locked in there. You see what he sees, you hear what he hears. You can almost like feel. I almost wish that they would bring back D-Box just for this film, because you get to feel all the rattles and shakes. You get to hear the metal howling, you get to hear like the wind outside. You get to hear like the engine straining and the gauges going off and the static on the radar, and it gets you so engaged into it. So direction-wise, I love the way they establish this atmosphere here. Chazelle has got it down. Probably one of my favorite scenes is where they're doing a practice session of, well, not really a practice session, but trying to get like the lander to connect with the mothership at one point, and it just spins out of control. It goes nuts. It just starts freaking out on them, and it's an intense scene, and it really gets you into it. That being said, I think the film kind of plateaus towards the end there, where he actually does get to the moon and lands on the moon with the lunar lander. And in that section, it kind of becomes more contemplative. The sound drops out completely. It falls back on the original audio from the moon landing. And it kind of brings the the whole realization of death to it kind of brings closure to that little bit of an arc there. That being said, the problem, like I said, the problem with this film is that it's much like Neil. Like it kind of like shuts out everything else. Like there's a whole bunch of other characters here, including Jason Clarke is one of the other pilots. You have Corey Stoll, who's kind of expertly cast here as Neil Armstrong, kind of making him look like a little bit of a dick here. But they don't really develop too much with that, and they stay mostly focused on the mission. Which, if you're just looking for the space experience, you'll get it here. You'll get it in spades. It is intense and exciting to follow. So much so that I almost wish that I almost wish that they focus on it more entirely, kind of like the same way they did with Apollo 13. Because like Apollo 13 was very, very straight, narrow, and technical with everything that it was doing. And Chazelle, I think, is trying to weave a little bit of character drama in here. That being said, I do like the way he does shoot some of the more character drama scenes here. I love the way that he uses like the space and the shadows inside the Armstrong household, and how, he films everything within NASA. Thank you for the follow. Thank you for the follow. Man, that came out of nowhere. So yeah, I will say this. Yeah, it's not Chazelle's best film. I think it does work for the experience. If you are gonna go see it in the theater, go see it in IMAX. Go see it on the biggest screen you can, because yeah, it is gonna get you as involved with something like Gravity, where you do have to see it in the theater to get the full experience. But ultimately, I really do like the film. Do I think it's the best of the year? Not quite. I might have to go back and watch a few more times just to get more engrossed in it. But I feel like it kind of missed the mark here and there, in between these huge hills that inside this film that really get you into the experience. So for First Man, 4 out of 5 stars.